My dear friends, this is Daisuke, and I hope this video finds you well and in very good spirits wherever you are in the world. And I'd like to continue on, if I may, with the viewer questions that I was so honored and so privileged to have been able to receive a few months back. And once again, I really apologize for my tardiness in responding to them, but I will do my best to respond to as many as possible. And up next is questions, a number of great questions from our dear friend Multimedia Assassin. So thank you very much for all the great questions, Multimedia Assassin. So I'm very sorry I won't be able to answer all of them here. I hope you can forgive me, but let me just choose from the questions here. And let's see, you have a number of them here, but the one that I'll probably answer here is, do you like practical effects? And if so, what would be your favorite types? So I think if I'm not mistaken, when you say favorite types, you're asking for examples maybe of practical effects that I might like in terms of what I've seen in cinema. So just to answer the first part of the question, on a general level, yes, I enjoy practical effects very much. Now that's not to say that I dislike computer-generated effects. I think if those are done well, or if they're done with a certain purpose or meaning, even when one might recognize a sense of artifice behind them, there's something grand and beautiful and lovely about the application of computer-generated effects. So I really do like that. But I also love practical effects, and I think perhaps that might have to do with, I've mentioned it before that I was born in 1979, so I grew up in the 80s, and part of my say, entry points or gateways into cinema or loving films was horror movies and science fiction movies and genre movies, and part of that exploration was the special effects, makeup, design effects. And so people like Tom Savini or people would be mentioned in articles or things that I would read, like Fangoria magazine and the like, and the idea of special effects and how they were done and what was the magic behind this particular effect. And I remember too, there was this great documentary, or it was a type of documentary about the making of certain special effects of Steve Johnson and Nightmare on Elm Street Part 4, The Dream Master, which is part of the Nightmare on Elm Street series. And that is a film that is filled with all these special effects, most of them practical. There are one or two optical effects, but most of them were practical effects, and it's fascinating how they were put together. And this was a film that was from the late 80s, and so I saw the film a little bit later, but I saw the making of before I saw the film itself, or I saw the documentary. And it had all these special effects shots and how they were making the shots, and there were scenes about souls trying to come out of the body, and people turning into bugs and all this. And so but it was so fascinating to me how this was put together, the effects, the appliance, the way that the molds were made, etc. And so I was so taken with this, and that's an example of where I fell in love with the practical effect because of, say, genre films and wanting to know the secret and wanting to know how it was done. I think too I was just in awe of special effects shots again in horror films. I remember the first time I saw, for example, the film Day of the Dead, the George Romero film Day of the Dead, and there's that maybe that oft-used phrase of, my jaw my jaw fell to the floor. It just, I was, when I saw that for the first time, it was on VHS. I was just, wow. And so, and it became, I think, a large part of that effect, that impact came from the effects and how brilliant those effects were. Those are among the greatest practical effects that I've ever seen in any film that I've seen in my life. So that probably answers the second part of your question, which is what are some examples. So Day of the Dead is one. The other example, the great example, Rob Bottin and The Thing, John Carpenter's The Thing. Now, that is a different, I mean, it's interesting how that film and practical effects operate, because that film is almost like it's trying to show just how surreal these practical effects are in the context of that story, which is the alien invading force and taking over the body and shape-shifting and the like. And so there is this sense of the unreal and the surreal to a lot of those effects. And so in that way, the effects are perhaps, or they could be seen, I don't look at it that way, but they could be seen as being maybe going against the inherent nature of a practical effect, which is trying to imitate reality to the point possible. Well, here with The Thing, it goes in the opposite direction, which is brilliant, absolutely brilliant. It goes in the way that it's meant to emphasize the surreal and give us these weird shapes, these weird amalgams of dogs and people and flowers and things, and it just comes out of nowhere. And it just builds and builds and builds to these absurd creations that just boggle the mind. And they are so absurd that they create these terrifying images that will, once you've seen them, you will never be able to unsee them. I think for me, as well as for a lot of people, the impact of The Thing and the impact of those images that you see in that film, you know, with the blah and everything, you see those images and you can never ever unsee them. I will never be able to forget The Thing and those practical effects from The Thing. I will never be able to unsee those until the day I die. And I say that with so much pride and so much happiness, because I got to see those effects play out in the film The Thing. I was so fortunate and lucky to have been able to see The Thing and to have it impact me the way it did. And it's due in large part to the images that were conjured up, those brilliant, bloody, brutal, beautiful images that were conjured up by the practical effects in that film, The Thing. John Carpenter's The Thing. So, John Carpenter's The Thing and the Romero film Day of the Dead probably are two examples that come to mind immediately. There are many others, I know, but those are some examples there. So again, they're 80s films, and maybe that's a reflection of my upbringing in the 80s, but and that's nothing to say against computer-generated effects or the like, because I do think that those are really great as well in the way that they're applied. But you asked about practical effects, and give examples in that field. Those are great. So. Anyway, thank you so much for a wonderful question, a set of questions. I'm sorry I wasn't able to answer all of them. That question, thank you very much for all of them, and for this practical effects question as well. And I'm curious to hear how you would respond to that particular question, as well as anyone else if you're interested to respond. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the great question from Multimedia Assassin. Okay, so that's it for now. And so until we meet again, please be happy and healthy and well, and please keep on watching a lot of great movies. Thank you so much, as always, for your time. I very much appreciate it. Stay strong, stay safe, and cheers.